if you're an entrepreneur working a lot harder, the connections that you make aren't that sustainable. Ambitious, you're driven, so your priorities are shifting. You just don't really have the time. Unfortunately, by this point, your habits are so ingrained with single executive life that good luck finding your partner.
Welcome to another episode of the Energy Lab podcast. This week's guest is Katarina Polonska. Katarina is a resourceful relationship coach. She empowers hardworking, high achievers to cultivate thriving relationships that surpass their professional success.
Gonna be on a bit of a dopamine addiction. You're smart, you're successful, you have assets. You're not gonna let just anyone into your life. And then from a dating pool perspective, it's freaking lonely at the top. And suddenly you realize no one's actually working out for you.
In this conversation, Katarina shares how purpose-driven entrepreneurs and executives can find an aligned, fulfilling life partner.
Build more money or build more investments, demoralized, they're giving up, just getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into your patterns. But yeah, you make more money, your career is better, your health is better, your family relationships are better, your colleagues are better. You keep attracting people that you don't find interesting. Let's look at that.
Ever wanted to know how to leverage behavioral science to attract your dream partner? Or how a great relationship can back up your success as a busy schedule entrepreneur? Stay with me, listen closely, and enjoy the conversation with Katarina Polonska.
What is the behavioral science that we might need to tweak and optimize, like 3 key ingredients to the recipe? And most of us are living on autopilot. We're just kind of taking stuff in. And a lot of it's crap. Most Hollywood movies are about seriously unhealthy attachment style dynamics. Okay, let's look at the science.
Hello, Katarina. It's great to see you and to have you in the Energy Lab podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good, and I'm super excited to explore a bit of the emotional energy topics. So since your mission is a very important one, and I mean helping entrepreneurs and executives and finding partner, soulmate, it's definitely something very particular, something that people definitely sometimes in their life, in their career, they don't really focus a lot on it, and then they kind of have problems probably later on. So I'm really curious to learn more on what you do. And as you know, the Energy Lab podcast is all about personal energy. And we talk physical energy, we talk mental energy, and emotional energy is a huge part of our whole well-being, our health. So that's something that I'm really passionate and want to learn more from you. I prepare a couple of questions so we can share a bit of expertise and knowledge that you've been building up during time.
Awesome.
First, I'd love to ask you a little of a personal question, but not too personal. Something that I like to ask our guests is, what's your superpower, Katarina?
I love that you have this question because I was really thinking about what's my superpower? And I think there are 2. Can I give 2?
Okay, I will make an exception. Usually accept one, but
the one I thought I was it's a bit of a weird superpower. I think one is I'm going to say relationships. Not saying that I'm some kind of, my relationships are bulletproof myself, but I think I have a knack and an understanding of the nuances, the intricacies, where they go wrong, where they can go right. And given it's my passion, honestly, my entire life, I've been obsessed with relationships. I think that's a superpower because I don't think there's enough of that around. That wasn't actually my original thought. My original thought was, I think, of strategy, strategizing. And I've always been quite a logical thinker. I've always been able to look at something and think, okay, well, if I want to optimize, if I want to get to this goal, what are the different steps that I need to do? And originally in my career, after I left Oxford, I was I'm going to go to McKinsey and become a strategy consultant, right? Because I was really into strategizing. And I did go into consultancy, but it's behavioral science consultancy. But that's where I think there's an interesting nuance, because I think when it comes to relationships, what I see out there is there isn't enough strategy behind them. And I mean that in the best of senses, that there isn't enough methodology, there isn't enough science, there isn't enough, okay, you're struggling, do this. X, Y, and Z will get you to this outcome. And I know that for me, it was like a game changer when I figured that out for myself. So that's why I think there are like two little superpowers there that I'm passionate about and grateful for.
Yeah, actually, nobody thinks about strategy in relationships, but maybe it's the reason why many of us then find ourselves in wrong relationships and start to analyze backwards, right? When something, it's probably some patterns repeat themselves as well. I don't know if something that I can guess, it's something that happens to other people, not only to me. But strategizing and a relationship, it's definitely a wonderful mix.
Yeah.
And the background, how you came to becoming a relationship coach, it's something that it's quite intriguing. I was reading a bit about you. I'd love to get the story behind if you'd like to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's kind of like three prongs to it. There's like the personal life, the professional life, and then the academic life, all of which have led me to this. And when I think about, I'll start with personal. Well, no, actually, I'll start with professional life. In professional life, my background's in behavioral science. So, I mean, first of all, I've always been building relationships, right? Like, I started out in the champagne and wine trade, which is all about relationships. It's all about creating connections, socializing. And again, I loved it for that. And I actually built my first business with my ex-partner. So, like, two co-founders in love and building a business. It was amazing. And so that was very relationship driven. And then I moved into behavioral science. And after a brief stint in philanthropy, which is also relationship driven, but it was in behavioral science that I worked in an organizational psychology company. And my role was kind of a consulting role. So my role was to go into companies, typically kind of Fortune 500 companies, and help build strategy, a people strategy, to optimize the well-being and the mental health and the relationships of the people. So if there was any exclusion, like diversity, equity, and inclusion was like a big area of focus for me. If there was like just bad management, if people were resigning and everyone was leaving and checking out, if people are disengaged, all of these kind of organizational psychology things, my role is to go in and diagnose the problem and then build a strategy. And so it was in that I was like, I really love this. I really love helping people and seeing how can I build better connections in the workspace. And that's what eventually led me to go to a big coaching company. So I worked for Better Up, which is the biggest coaching company in the world. And in that organization, I learned the power of one-on-one, as well as group coaching, which is kind of my 2024 project. But I learned the power of coaching. I learned the power of asking good questions and kind of the ICF model. I also benefited from having my own coaches. So I had unlimited coaching as an employee there. And they were the most incredible coaches. Like, I love them so much. And, you know, we're still in touch and they're still friends. And they changed my life. Like, they honestly changed my life. And so that's what made me go into the coaching space. And then professionally speaking, I didn't start out as a relationship coach. I started out coaching founders and executives. So kind of executive coaching, since that was my background. And I started out with a hypothesis, which was, well, everyone that I speak to in the entrepreneurial executive space has anxiety. They're all burnt out. They're all very stressed. They're all like really struggling. And as I worked with them, what became very clear, especially with the male executives, was that actually loneliness was at the heart of a lot of it. And when I drilled down into that loneliness, I realized there was a strong disconnection and self-abandonment. That's kind of like, you know, terms that I use. And they were very disconnected from themselves. And that would manifest in terms of having bad relationships with their spouse or being single and unable to create healthy relationships. And so the shift into relationship coaching really was a very organic process of here's kind of what I'm seeing with clients. And for me to help create results for them, I have to help them connect back to themselves. And in the process, lo and behold, their marriage improves or they find a partner. That's when I was like, okay, like I've got the vehicle and I don't think anyone's going to go in thinking I need to connect with myself more. Like, I don't think people think that. But if I tell them I'll help them find a partner or save their marriage, then heck yes, people are gonna come sign up for that. And so really it was a decision of like, how do I position what I'm doing? What's the impact? So that was the relationship stuff there professionally. And then on an academic level, I studied and I specialized in gender dynamics. So I specialize in masculinity is kind of my main area of speciality. So I've studied masculinity my whole life, both at Nottingham and at Oxford, and I'm a peer-reviewed academic in this space. And when I study masculinity, I'm looking at what are the limitations of the kind of the gender role. And I look at mental health a lot, right? So I look at like, why is it that suicide is like the number one killer of men? Why is loneliness such a big problem amongst masculinity? And where are the behaviors that are hurting men? And how can we reframe those behaviors and expand what the notion of healthy masculinity is? And in the same vein, I look at femininity too. There's a lot of toxic femininity out there that's hurting men and women. And so again, I look at how can we expand femininity into a more healthy femininity that enables greater well-being and mental health. So that's a big part. And that creates connection, right? Because healthy masculinity and healthy femininity will create healthier connections, healthier relationships, and happier people. And then on a personal level, my father's a coach. And he was executive coach, turned more relationship coach. He did divorce my mother about 10 years ago. And that was really painful to watch, like extremely painful to see. And I think it really ruptured my family in a pretty destructive way. Like I was single for 5 years after I relapsed into anorexia. I had a lot of like consequences. And I was in my 20s, right? So I was like an adult at this time. But seeing the divorce was devastating, and seeing the impact on my parents just kind of made me think like, I never want to go through a divorce. Like, this is awful. And I witnessed my father go through his own humbling, and his current relationship is very different, you know, and now he talks about it a lot. And that also made me think about relationships in a different way. Like I kind of got the gravity of how important they are. And I went down my own soul-searching journey. And, you know, I did the Hoffman process. I did a lot of retreats and self-development. And then eventually I found my partner and I got engaged. And I still ended up in a bad relationship. It was not a healthy engagement, even though I thought I was doing everything right. And in the end, I ended up calling off that engagement. And that again sent me into this thought process of like, how is it that I'm such a privileged person? I know about gender dynamics. I work in behavioral science. I have a great job. I've healed my family dynamics. I've had therapy for like 10 years. How is it even I'm still in the wrong engagement and I'm suffering? And that's what made me think, okay, there's clearly something up here and I really want to understand this. And so I went on this 11-month quest. Like truly it was a quest of, I'm very lucky that I've got a lot of money because I worked for, you know, the company I was at was paying me very well. I had a learning stipend. And so I was just like, I'm just going to throw money at this problem and try to understand where did I go wrong? And I was in my 30s. I was like, I want to have kids at some point. I want to have a family. I never, ever, ever want to go through a divorce. And I don't want to call off another engagement. Like, I just cannot go through that. It was crippling. So if I do want to find a partner, it has to be the freaking right decision. And so that's what I really focused on. And in those 11 months of like deep work, relationship coaching, therapy, like all of the stuff that now makes up my 90-day program, essentially. In all of that, I then met my husband and like everything changed. Like, and yeah, so it was really like looking at that and then kind of all three things coming together and then me thinking, I guess this is my superpower. So even though
I guess that you knew that already. You just were like linking the points, but that was not a difficult task, I guess, because
but it was scary.
The difficulty was in the learning behind, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
you are saying. I mean, it's just summing it up, but it's must have been something.
It was
long, painful, and deep. So that's definitely one challenge for life, right?
Absolutely. It was long and deep and challenging, but also scary. I think the reason I never went into relationship coaching from day one was I honestly, even when I did go into relationship coaching, the fear was, oh my goodness, people are going to judge me. My former employers are going to think that I've, gone off the rails. People are going to think that, oh, I'm just another Instagram coach. Or I was so scared. And even now, sometimes, when I'm posting on LinkedIn, I'm like, oh, what am I doing? This is really scary. But I know it's not. And then when the DMs come in, that's when I'm like, okay, this is good.
Yeah, and especially when you see life of people improving, I think that's the magic. That's the real magic. That's also, I can mirror myself in what you say, of course, in another field. But that seeing the results and seeing people's life improving and seeing that direct and that, I think that's the reason why you keep on doing, or we keep on doing it, even if sometimes you ask yourself, like, what am I doing? It makes sense. Yeah. That's a wonderful story. And I understand why it led you to what you are doing now, because it would have been a shame if you wouldn't give this gift that you've been earning to somebody that needs it. That's, I think, this purpose, the big purpose behind it. I'm really curious about entrepreneurs and relationships, because our audience or people we work with are entrepreneurs. Are there really reasons or patterns were typical of entrepreneurship minded people compared to other, or is it like no matter who, everybody has the same challenges, we are all on the same boat? Like, tell me a bit about your experience with entrepreneurs.
And this is a really good question. And absolutely, I think it's a lot harder. I think it's a lot harder for so many reasons. And I mean, think about it. Let's say you're not an entrepreneur. You have a normal 9-to-5 job. You earn a normal little salary, and, you're not aspiring to more. The ambition isn't driving you. You've grown up in your hometown. You're happy in your hometown. You have your community, you have your friends, you have your family. The odds are you're probably going to meet someone pretty organically, pretty quickly. And then the trajectory in front of you is like, well, you're going to get married, and then you're going to have a baby, and you're going to be living in your home, and life is calm. Life is calm and life is pretty simple. And you're working, 35 hours a week. So you finish at 5, and what do? You greet your partner and you cook a nice dinner, and, you might have a bit of challenge with having a baby or something, but generally speaking, you've got family nearby, and the family are probably there to help you. And life is more simple. If you're an entrepreneur or a successful executive, there's no way in hell you're working 35 hours a week. Okay, so you're working a lot harder. You're also going to be ambitious. So I'm willing to bet that you've probably traveled a lot. You've probably studied abroad. You probably have left your hometown. You probably have a bit of a nomadic existence because you're on a plane a lot of the time. You're traveling a lot of the time. The connections that you make aren't that sustainable because actually you're in one place at a time, then you might have to move countries. I've lived in 7 different countries actually, but I've relocated 6 times on my own accord. You're also, again, you're ambitious, you're driven, so your priorities are shifting, right? Like your priority is going to be the next career step or building my business and then exiting it. You're going to have different financial goals. And so all of these things compounded together mean that you're running on a very time-poor plan, like you just don't really have the time. You're also probably going to be more isolated. You don't have the same support network. You don't have the same family around you. And your priorities are different. So mentally, you're going to be focused on your business and whatever it might be. And so you look at things differently. And again, I get it because this was me for such a long time. And then you get to a point where, okay, now I've kind of got my career somewhat ticking over, or maybe I've had an exit and, I bought a place or I'm settled in a place and I think this is okay. And you want to start looking for a partner. Well, unfortunately, by this point, your habits are so ingrained with single executive life that good luck finding a partner, like good luck. You're not going to have the relational skills. You're not going to know yourself because you've self-abandoned, frankly, most of your life. You're not going to have the time and the capacity because you're going to get distracted and you're going to be on a bit of a dopamine addiction, right? Because to be honest, if we're entrepreneurs and if we're executives, and again, I can relate to this, if we're chasing that next goal, chasing that high, we're on a quick dopamine hit cycle. So that slow and steady, intimate relational practice of building a connection and letting it unfold over time with its own conflicts and ebbs and flows is just not going to appeal to you. So you're going to get bored. You're going to get bored and you're probably going to self-sabotage relationships really quickly. And then from a dating pool perspective, it's freaking lonely at the top. You're smart, you're successful, you have assets. You're not going to let just anyone into your life, right? And so this is what I hear a lot of is people come to me, typically like 35 plus. I actually don't have any clients under 35. And I've spoken to a few who are considering it, but I can see, I'm like, yeah, it hasn't hit you yet. It hasn't hit you. It's at 35 plus where there's kind of this wake up of like, okay, I'm done. I want to have a family now. I want to focus on this. And now what? And it's crickets, right? And then they go on the apps. They're looking on the apps and they're like, well, no one here really looks good enough for me. No one here is really interesting. They might go on a few dates and they're like, well, there's no spark. This person isn't interesting. They're not intelligent enough. This person I'm looking at, maybe they're still going through an exit, or maybe they're doing something that isn't appealing for me professionally. And suddenly you realize no one's actually working out for you. And it's hard to find someone. And so you get more and more discouraged. And the more and more discouraged you get, the more and more kind of disheartened you are. And the energy you bring is different. And then you're weighed down. And then you start to think, well, maybe I just won't look at this at all. And actually, I'll work harder, or I'll build more money, or build more investments, or I'll move countries, whatever it is. I see that a lot. And then again, you get that dopamine hit, and you're back in the same cycle. Because you can move countries.
Never-ending story, right? Like it's a loop, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how bad is the situation when they come to you? Like they almost lost hope, or they say like, okay, like now I need a strategy, or I need somebody that will teach me how. So they come to you in a phase where they already tried, I guess, everything they could, right?
And again, that's a really good question, because that's something I'm kind of beginning to see more patterns with. They typically come to me not when they're fully demoralized. I've spoken to people who are in that demoralization state and they've given up. And actually, like it's really, really, really sad. Like it actually just makes me so sad when I see them demoralized, they've given up, and they're just kind of like, well, screw this. I'm just going to focus on shopping, holidays, my friends. I hear this a lot. And I'm just like, oh, like you're just getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into your patterns. It's going to be basically impossible to meet someone like it is, because you're going to be so narrow and
close,
little. Oh, so sad. But the people who do come and they're open to working with me, they're not quite at the demoralization stage, but they're at that point where they're like, flying heck, I need to figure this out, because I can't keep throwing more money on bad dates that go nowhere. I can't keep doing random bits of therapy and retreats and personal development. It's too chaotic. It's too scattered. I'm getting frustrated. I just need someone to tell me what I need to do. And honestly, that's what my program is something I wish I had years ago. I really wish I had it years ago, because I think I would have saved myself.
There must be a huge energy draining moments, because that really sucks up all the emotional energy that is vital for us to function ideally. You can muster your physical energy, you can do, drink a lot of water, do sport, eat perfectly, but then if you're not energized from your life, from the people around you, from that special person, then everything else, it's also impacted. So I think this is something that the sooner we realize it, the better we get off. I heard about, sorry?
I was just going to say, and just to add to that, one final thing, it's like even if we take the person out of it, like the life partner out of it, I think what people don't understand, and what I'm really hell-bent on trying to re-educate, is in order to find the life partner that's going to be the right match, you have to be the right match yourself. And in order to be the right match for yourself, you have to be the right match for who you are in your heart, in your core. You have to be in, alignment. I hate that word, but you have to be in proper, authentic alignment. And I'm not being woo-woo about this. This is about science. You need to know who you are and build a life around yourself that allows you to live your most meaningful, fulfilling, nourishing, authentic life. And so the partner is like a symptom. It's like an accidental result. My program isn't matchmaking. I'm not here to be like, let's focus on your partner. No, that's a symptom. I'm here to focus on, let's get you sorted so that the partner happens by accident faster than you could ever imagine, because everything else in your life is working. And so, you make more money, your career is better, your health is better, your family relationships are better, your colleagues are better. It's a whole big transformation. It's not just the partner. right? You can work with a pickup artist and find a partner tomorrow. Doesn't mean it's going to work or last.
That makes totally sense, because when everything else, as you said, is scattered and we focus on the outside and we attract, maybe we even attract people. It's not like, we are alone in this world, but we attract the wrong people. And then you see the same thing happen. And I know that, so from personal story, and you always recognize the same traits, then you need to ask yourself, like, not what's wrong with others, but what's going on with me. And that always starts from us, not from the others.
Absolutely.
I'm curious about the behavioral science of attraction and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to share something with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking a lot about how to position kind of the overarching formula of the work that I do. And since, my background's behavioral science, but I'm also a sociologist, and I also look at psychology a lot, and I look at somatics. And so I was like, really, it is overarchingly behavioral science. And really, it's actually attraction, because I'm curious about, as we're living our day to day, what is it that we are attracting day to day around us in every aspect of our lives? Like, what's going on internally to be attracting that? Like, you keep attracting people that you don't find interesting. Let's look at that. You keep attracting people who, love bomb you and they're already intense for a month and then they disappear and they ghost you. Let's look at what you're attracting there. So I'm curious about what people are attracting and the behavioral science around that, and like what's going on internally. And then what do they want to attract? Like, what do they need to attract that's going to be sustainable, nourishing, meaningful, and all the good things? And so again, what is the behavioral science that we might need to tweak and optimize internally in order to get there? Like, what's the how, right? And by that, what I mean is there's kind of like a three-pronged process, or like three key ingredients to the recipe. The first one is liberation. So many people are held back by their past and they don't even know it. They have past emotions that are trapped somatically in their body. They're thinking about the past. They have lots of belief systems that are actually reducing their capacity to see reality clearly. They have a lot of shame. They have a lot of guilt. They have a lot of grief. They have a lot of heaviness. And that naturally comes, I think if we've made it, to 35 and we're still single, well, you're going to have attachment wounds. That's going to be a big one for you. There's probably going to be a bit of depression and resentment about being single still. And there's going to be probably baggage from your past. Like, it's just part of being, in our 30s, like it's normal. And so this stuff is holding you back fundamentally. This stuff is actually impacting the schemas to which you're seeing the world and taking in your reality, which is then creating that self-perpetuating cycle that you're actually self-sabotaging, right? So liberation is like clear all of that, get control over that. And that's a big part of the work that I do. The second part is the behavioral science. So really looking at how can we re-educate ourselves on the things that are actually not working for ourselves. So again, most of us are living on autopilot. We've grown up, we've never looked at this stuff. We've never studied this stuff. We've read like, GQ or like Ask Men or Cosmo or like all the magazines out there. We're probably on Instagram scrolling and taking stuff in passively, probably looking up like dating stuff on YouTube, whatever it is, like, watching reality TV. We're just kind of taking stuff in. And a lot of it's crap. A lot of it's really unhelpful pop culture sound bites. Most Hollywood movies are about seriously unhealthy attachment style dynamics. They're mostly about power struggles. They're mostly about like really toxic stuff. There's a ton of toxic femininity, ton of toxic masculinity, all this like awfulness that we're all just like passively taking in.
From very young age, right? Absolutely. If you think about how you grow up with all the Walt Disney things and all the prince and princesses and all that stuff, and then the expectations is like, in one of these movies, and then reality hits, right?
Exactly. And then throw in the cultural differences. Like, I'm from Eastern Europe, so like throw on this, Eastern European baggage there. And then you've got your parents, and then you've got your family intergenerationally, you've got like your exes and all of this stuff. And, single people stick with other single people. Like, it's kind of, again, proven. And unhappily married people tend to have unhappily married people. So then you're also talking about it to your peers. And you're regurgitating more and more and more unhelpful crap. And so a big thing with me is like, okay, let's look at the science. Let's look at what is healthy relating. What is a secure relationship? What are your needs? What is the behavioral science of creating a healthy, integrated, psychologically sound person? And how do they build a healthy, meaningful relationship? How do they even date? How do they show up? Right? And I look at gender dynamics here. I look at needs. I look at attachment styles. I help people become more secure, all this stuff, behavioral science. And then the final stage is integrity. So after you've learned all this, after you've done all this work, cleared out the past, learned the behavioral science, how can we make the rest of your life into integrity with who you are? And so that might involve communication. How do you now communicate to others in your life and to new people in your life who you are, what your needs are, what your boundaries are, what your expectations are? What does your life even look like? It might be that you might need to tweak some things and optimize some things. It might be that you need to actually reevaluate certain connections. It might be that you want to integrate new hobbies and new behaviors. It might be that you want to even I had one client who relocated countries, right? Because she was just like, this is out of integrity. I mean, I had the same thing. I left countries again twice when I was doing this work. So looking just to kind of optimize and tweak and improve. And this is where actually it gets really exciting because yeah, your career and your salary will probably get better because as you're tweaking and optimizing, you're into integrity, you're more into flow and things are going to just shine more brightly. Life is just going to be nicer. And then, yeah, so that's kind of a big part of the integrity piece. And also, how do you actually build relationships with integrity, right? So I have clients who come to me and they've been with their partner for 2 years and they haven't talked about some big things like children or where are they going or expectations of husband and wife roles. And so then 2 years down the line, they're like, well, now I've got a ton of sunk costs and I've invested all this time and I'm very attached to this person, but actually we're fundamentally not aligned. And there's a lot of struggle. So my whole thing is no, within the first 3 dates, you can get all of that stuff clear. Trust me.
3 days, in the first 3 days. Wow. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think with my husband, it was by date 1, truly the proper first real date. And granted, it was a 6-hour date, but it was we just kind of went through everything. And by the end, we were both oh, okay. Wow. And, but the point is it doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be oh, we're having a big conversation. Once you know who you are so deeply and clearly, you will be radiating that. And it will just effortlessly and easily, with a very light, happy, joyful energy come out of you. And you'll be able to vet and sift through people so quickly to find your person. That's really the beauty of the work. And so that's the integrity piece. So that's the behavioral science of attraction. So that was a really long explanation.
Wow. That's huge. I mean, that's probably you just mentioned it high level, I guess. It was not in details, but it's very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. Are there any common mistakes that busy schedule people do when they date? You just mentioned the fact that people don't ask questions and you say, okay, right from the beginning, ask the important questions. So I guess this would be one of it. Any other that you'll be recognizing as common mistakes when dating?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of my pet peeves is hearing this narrative of I had one date, I didn't feel the spark, I don't want to see them again. And that's when I'm okay. I mean, ask most married couples. They probably didn't feel a spark. This spark is a mythic Hollywood fiction, right? It's not actually the healthiest marker of identifying compatibility. There are other things we need to be looking for. So that's kind of one false thing. Also coming in with a lot of expectations around social protocol of, well, the man has to pay for everything and the man has to plan everything and if she's late and all this kind of judgment, which again, it's it's fine to have some boundaries, but these aren't necessarily boundaries. These are just kind of defense mechanisms and judgments and projections. And they're really proxies. You're not actually looking for the things that you're looking for. You've just mentally made them a proxy for the values that you're trying to identify within the person, right? Generosity and being respectful and all these things. they're not the best marker, at least not on the first date or two. So having kind of the false proxies there. Also having really rigorous criteria about, the long list of things that I need my partner to have. And I have, I hear like, well, he has to be over 6 foot tall. And I like kind of the Nordic look. I've heard that before, like the Nordic tall Viking man and all of this criteria. And he has to have had at least one exit. And he has to be at a place where he's ready to have kids like next year. And it's very, very like specific. And again, I get it. You're trying to find someone who aligns with your values and will meet your needs, but you're getting the wrong proxies, right? Like if I looked at my list from my list that I had like years ago, my ex-fiance ticked every single box. And I say that with so much love to him. Like, honestly, he ticked every single box. And that's partly why I was like, yeah, like, great. If I look at my husband now, he doesn't tick those boxes, right? Because I realized that these boxes were, again, the false proxy. It wasn't the right thing to be looking for. So a big part of what I do is like help them get really clear on like, what is it they're looking for? Because you can find that much faster when you know exactly what it is. I think they're kind of like the 3 main ones, but then also just not prioritizing relationships enough. I remember talking to one executive who, she'd been single. She was like 39, really wanted a family, really wanted kids. And when I asked her, I said, I think we were just kind of talking conversation. And I was like, so when do you go on dates? Like, how do you go on dates? And she was like, well, I've got like my yoga, I've got my gym class, I've got my meditation group, I go traveling. I kept going. I love to go shopping on Saturdays. I love going to like the market. I love going to museums, blah, 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 and skiing. And she was like probably like 1 day a month. I remember being like, a month. And you're not even thinking about this stuff. Like, you're not reading about it. You're not re-educating yourself. So your inner knowledge is pretty flawed and your inner filter is pretty flawed. So you're coming at the situation with a really bad internal mechanism, and then you're giving 1 day a month to basically go on a date with entirely the wrong person, feel crap about it, feel demoralized, and then you wait another 30 days to do the same thing. Like, you're going to die alone. Sorry, but like, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So
I know that, you have a whole program for that. And it's not like I want to ask you something that is, summing it up. But if there's like one tip that you can give to busy schedule entrepreneurs, no matter if men or women, or maybe there's so big difference that you need to separate it. But what would be like one thing that you would tell your typical person that comes to you and say, hey, I really am struggling to find a partner. I feel emotionally drained and I have not a lot of time to stay, all the time in an app, if this works anyway. Like one thing.
Mm-hmm. To prioritize it. And I know that's really basic. But I have an example. Like, if you prioritize it, like, Tony Robbins goes on and on about decisions and the power of decisions, and how once you make the decision, you actually like level up your energy and your focus shifts and everything. It's the same thing with prioritizing. The moment you decide to prioritize this area of your life, you stop playing small. You stop doing the things that subconsciously aren't working, right? Because when we want a relationship deep down, but then we're wasting our time by doing the crap that isn't actually working because we haven't thought about it, we haven't evaluated, like we're just kind of running on autopilot. We're actually out of integrity. Like we're actually hurting ourselves and reducing our self-esteem, and because we're reducing self-trust. Like, our heart wants a partner, but then our head and our behavior is showing otherwise, and we're just not taking it seriously. And that actually is really damaging on the human psyche. And so the moment that you can actually be brave and be honest and say, I actually really want to make this work. I actually really want to figure this out. And I'm going to pull my finger out and stop playing small. And I'm just going to look at this stuff and make it a priority. That alone is a huge, huge, huge step, because you're suddenly like in that decision, going to stop doing the stuff that's actually hurting you in the long run. So that's kind of like first step, like just decide to do it.
Yeah. So prioritizing. Of course, if you really want something and you're even asking for help, but then you say, okay, once a month, maybe I take a bit of time, and maybe that once a month you're not even doing the right thing, then it's difficult.
Yeah.
One last questions on dating apps. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think that for busy schedule people, is it the place to look for because it's effective, quick, and everything is, some algorithm technology inside? What's your opinion or experience?
Yeah,
with
great
it?
question. I mean, dating apps, going to a bar, going to a networking event, it's all the same stuff, right? Like, I mean, a dating app is no different to like being in a bar and just scanning the room. There'll be some people who are married and lying about it. There'll be some people who are rebounding. There'll be some people who are healthy singles. It doesn't matter what avenue you're using. You can even use freaking LinkedIn, like by networking, and you'll probably meet someone, The point is more, what is your internal filter and what is the schema through which you're actually identifying people? And then how are you discerning who's the right fit or not? Because if the schema is flawed, which for the most single people it is, and actually a lot of married people it is flawed because they haven't done that inner journey, then it really doesn't matter. You could literally be with a matchmaker paying 50K for 6 months of work, and they can find you all the dates. But it's either going to be you're getting attracted to the wrong people or you're attracting the wrong people. Or, you might even get married or get engaged. But again, if you haven't done that internal journey and process, the cracks will appear later because you came at it from a place of inauthentic connection, right? That's why I'm like, again, anyone can pay for a matchmaker and find a match. Anyone can manipulate themselves into a connection. I did. Like many people do. That doesn't mean it's going to be the right one. And I don't think many high achiever executives, entrepreneurs want to go through a divorce. Like, it's expensive. I just don't think they do. So that's kind of why I'm like, just do it first. Do this first. Then get on the apps. Then get on the app and you'll be fine.
Probably I can imagine it's a bit more difficult exactly to get, that understanding that those elements of the human relationship that you get only when you meet somebody face to face, you can understand much more. So I guess that it's even more challenging.
Yeah.
Of course, you have all the, the criterias, and probably it's quicker, but I imagine that's not easy. And depends where you live and what exactly the time you invest, it can be super challenging. So doing the right work, the work within, even if you don't like the word alignment, you mentioned it a couple of times. You said at the beginning, I hate that word, but it's about first the internal, be happy or successfully in a relationship with somebody if you're first not in the relationship with yourself. So I think that's, at least in my experience and from what I'm getting from what you're telling us, the key to all of this. So people find my ideal partner somewhere out there in tech or life, but where can people find you? If they want to connect with you, where is the place they need to look for?
Yeah, great question. So first point will be my website, and that's just www.katarinapolonska.com. You can book a call with me directly there or dive into my blogs or whatever, whatever. I've actually got a diagnostic on there. So if you want to find out what's blocking you from finding and creating that ultimate relationship, do the diagnostic. I built it with a psychologist. Like, it's pretty epic. And then on Instagram, I have a tiny little following, but I'm growing it. Katarina Polonska, that's my business account. And then on LinkedIn. And you can find me on LinkedIn as Katarina Polonski with a Y. Lovely Eastern European complexities there, but it's the same person.
Yeah, I will put everything in the description so that people can click on it and connect with you. Super interesting topics. I'm very grateful for everything you shared. Many times people just, have guesses and they really stay within their own thoughts, worries, and they don't ask for help. But this is having a healthy relationship. It's way too important for our overall success. So if you think about all the time on the career, and then you look back and you think like, okay, what did I miss? Like, why I didn't care about it? So it's important to ask for help, and definitely the person to go. So I will recommend you everywhere where I can, and I'm really grateful for our conversation today. Thank you very much, Katarina.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye.